Hola, mi gente. Welcome back to the Mano a Mano podcast. Thank you for joining us for our first episode in 2025. I'm George Laws Garcia, Executive Director of the Puerto Rico Statehood Council. And for today's episode, we have an exclusive, in-depth interview with Gabriella Boffelli, the new Executive Director of the Puerto Rico Federal Affairs Administration. In this role, Gabriella oversees the Washington, D.C. office of the Governor of Puerto Rico, Jennifer González-Colón, and serves as the top advisor to the governor on all federal policy issues impacting the island. Prior to that, Gabriella served as Chief of Staff to Jennifer González-Colón when she was Resident Commissioner of Puerto Rico in the U.S. House of Representatives, overseeing all the legislative strategy and federal policy initiatives. With over 13 years of experience in the House of Representatives, including roles working for former Congresswoman Ileana Ros-Lehtinen and on the House Committee on Foreign Affairs, Gabriella has built a proven track record of success in government affairs, policy, and advocacy. Welcome to the show. All right. Well, Gabriella Boffelli, welcome to the Mano a Mano podcast.
Thank you. Very excited to be here, and thank you for the invitation.
Well, congratulations on your new role as Executive Director of the Puerto Rico Federal Affairs Administration.
3 weeks in, starting.
That's
It's
great.
Didn't have much of a break transitioning from the congressional office, where I was Chief of Staff to the now Governor Jennifer González, and then starting this new role. Hitting the ground running here with Congress starting January 3rd. They've had 3 weeks of session. So it's been very busy, and then, as you know, with the presidential inauguration as well. So it's been an exciting time.
Well, that's fantastic.
And it's been cold here in DC as well. So
yes,
we have that to add on to the mix.
Very cold.
Yeah.
But what is not cold and what is very warm is your experience and all of the history that you're bringing with you from your time on the Hill, working as Chief of Staff for then Resident Commissioner Jennifer González. Talk to us a little bit about your background working in Congress, how you came into contact with the issue of Puerto Rico, and particularly the Puerto Rico status issue, and what you've been up to for these last 8 years working for Jennifer González.
So I got my start on the Hill in 2010, more or less, as an intern in the district. My family lives in Miami, Florida. And my congressional representative was Ileana Ros-Lehtinen, who was the first Hispanic woman in Congress, Cuban-American. And, I started with an internship, and that transitioned into, coming to DC as a staff assistant, which is the bottom of the
Totem pole, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And thinking, I'm going to try this out for a couple of years. And, I just became more and more passionate about the issues, started taking on more responsibilities, and then, became legislative director. And I was with her. So she was always very passionate about Puerto Rico statehood. And I think, in fact, you and I, when you worked for then Resident Commissioner Pedro Pierluisi,
yep.
we had those conversations. So Ileana, saw that with a clear eye. So I enjoyed working on that. There were other things happening at the time with the establishment of PROMESA, then the hurricanes.
Yep.
So I became more and more in tune with the inequalities going on in Puerto Rico, right?
And
besides
being from
besides
Florida,
the status issue.
There's no way to avoid that just because of the huge connection of Puerto Ricans moving from the island to Florida, and then them just being concerned about their family back home.
Exactly.
On the island.
We had I remember we had an intern from the Congressional Hispanic Leadership Institute who was Puerto Rican, and she was telling us about her family and the energy issue. They spent months without power immediately after the hurricane, as it's the case for many families in Puerto Rico at the time, even for the governor, several months. So yeah, I started learning more about the issues. We're in Florida, no strangers to hurricanes as well.
Of course.
But it was definitely, obviously, a whole other level of disaster that had occurred in Puerto Rico. So Congress, at the time, Congresswoman Ileana Ross-Layton and Congresswoman Jennifer González were very close. So we established that relationship with her in her office. And then when Congresswoman Ross-Layton retired, there happened to be an opportunity with Congresswoman González, and I think, I think it was the perfect fit for me, and I enjoyed those 6 years, learning more about the issues. I've been surrounded with an amazing team and amazing supporters that have taught me more than I ever thought I would need to know. And the issues of status was first and foremost in the now governor's agenda. So I got to work on that very, very closely.
And I had the opportunity to collaborate with you often during that entire period of time. So I saw the amazing legislative accomplishments that you were able to help then Resident Commissioner Jennifer González and the rest of your team achieve in terms of the disaster recovery funding that you were able to secure for Puerto Rico, not just after the hurricanes, but also after the earthquakes, and then money during the pandemic. So, really critical support that is right now still kind of playing out in helping Puerto Rico turn its economy around and increase its competitiveness. But I also know that you played a crucial role in helping Jennifer González negotiate the Puerto Rico Status Act and see that bill pass through the House. Can you just tell us a little bit about that experience?
Well, I think I even cried when it finally passed. So our original legislation was the Puerto Rico Admission Act, which follows the same path as any other territory that became a state. Same bill as Alaska, as Hawaii. Yes or no plebiscite, a binding plebiscite, sanctioned by the federal government so that people could choose, right, their path forward. And that was the legislation that we had presented in Congress and had bipartisan support.
And that was after the 2020 plebiscite where statehood had definitively won a majority of 54%.
That's correct. So the logical next step was to do that.
Of course.
And that's a legislation that we were advocating for. Mm-hmm. And then there were a couple of hearings in the Natural Resources Committee that was then chaired by Raul Grijalva. The Democrats were in control in the House at the time. And then there was no viable path forward, with certain opposition.
Specifically, Nydia Velázquez and AOC that presented the Puerto Rico Self-Determination Act, which basically ignored the fact that there had been a plebiscite, that statehood had won, and they said, no, we want to open it up so that Puerto Rico creates a status convention, and then they come up with new options, and then people vote on it again, and Congress may or may not decide to grant them whatever option they decide.
Right. It's kind of a convoluted process because it's never been done that way. Yeah. Any of the other territories that became states, none of them had a status convention, So that's when we started negotiating. And I'm gonna be very honest. I didn't think it was gonna happen. Yeah. Because how do you reconcile those two things, right?
Very tough.
So it was, as you can imagine, a lot of difficult conversations, a lot of negotiation, led by then Congresswoman Jennifer González, who had those tough conversations, and seeing her determination, and because we wanted to advance the issue forward, and with Democrats being in the majority at the time, we understood that we needed to do some of these negotiations, or at least try, right, in order to be able to accomplish what we did.
And you were being encouraged by Democratic leadership, particularly Steny
Hoyer has been a great ally. I have to say that, yes, his support was instrumental in setting this, moving it forward. So after, I want to say, almost a year maybe, that took us to come up with the language and negotiate all those details. We went down to Puerto Rico, had a forum there where we met with all the political parties in Puerto Rico. I have to say that Congresswoman Jennifer González was the only one who met with all the political parties everyone.
Wow.
Even, you know, we don't align on some of these issues, but she met with all the local and national parties in Puerto Rico. So, you know, we did the work.
Yeah, took the public input.
We had set up on the Natural Resources Committee website. We took the comments that, you know, citizens wanted to leave in support or wanting to change pieces of the bill or things that they didn't agree. We took all their input very seriously. We had many conversations, many meetings about that. So it was a long process. Then going, you know, through the markup, we were hoping to pass it before August recess to give us additional time for the Senate. But unfortunately, the so-called diaspora resisted, and that delayed the process. I have to say, you know, with some Democratic members, because you know these days you're counting every vote.
Yep.
And it's been that way for the past 4 years. I know a lot of people talk up right now about the Republicans having a slim majority, but it was that way also the previous Congress, the 117th Congress. So we were able to do that and finally passed it in the House.
In December 2022.
In December, with 16 Republicans supporting us. And there were many more. I know what people say, but there were many more who support the cause of statehood, but then either they don't hear enough from their districts, or they did not like the option of independence.
And how that was described.
And how it does describe American citizenship and that sort of thing.
And I also heard some qualms about the definition of free association in there as well. Yeah.
Exactly. And, you know, with the growing influence of, you know, China, Russia in the hemisphere, it's a threat to national security for the United States. So you don't want to have an independent country. I mean, even if there's a treaty.
Especially full of United States citizens, right?
Exactly. 3.2 million. What are you going to do with them? You can't deprive them from their citizenship if they already have it. Yeah. That is, you know, we did the research. Yeah. So 3.2 million American citizens. And you know, when you talk about independence with free association, you got to remember it's a treaty. Either one of the parties can break it.
Yep. At any point.
At any point. So it doesn't guarantee that you're going to have this relationship with the United States. Yeah. Because, you know, elections happen here and over there, and you may not have a like-minded, you know, elected president that is going to want to keep that relationship with each other. So we heard a lot of that from Republicans, national security perspective.
And some of the statehood advocates that we work with in the Statehood Council, they also voice that as well, because the reality is, in order for voters in Puerto Rico to really be able to provide a fully informed consent to that option of, you know, free association, they have to know what they're really voting for. The only thing that they're guaranteed is independence, right? The free association, Congress may or may not approve it. And if Congress doesn't approve it, then you're just another independent country, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, that was in 2022. And then in the last 2 years, the bills were reintroduced in the House, where Republicans have been in control. And I know that Jennifer González really tried to push for hearings in the House. Unfortunately, you know, the will was just not there with committee leadership in the House Natural Resources and Mr. Westerman. Although he did give hearings on other issues that are critically important to Puerto Rico, like energy and other topics. But then the really big advances that were done were in the Senate. Can you tell us just a little bit about how the Puerto Rico Status Act advanced in the Senate in 2023 and 2024?
Okay. I'm going to add something about the House, though. We were able to secure some Republicans that have voted against it before and add them as co-sponsors to the Puerto Rico Status Act.
Fantastic.
So we did make some gains in that, and then we added also some freshmen. I don't have the number in front of me right now, but we do have more Republicans that sign on to the bill. For example, Alex Mooney signed on. Mike Lawler, Lori Chavez de Reamer. So we were able to get new Republicans supporting, because once you sit with them and you explain to them the issue and for them, statehood is a no-brainer, right? And that should be, Puerto Rico should be a state. And for them, they thought, well, if this is what you have and this is what needs to happen, even with the other two options, we will support you. So that was huge for us. But yes, in the Senate, we were able to work with Senator Heinrich. It was an approach that I think a lot of us, did. He's always been a champion for us in the statehood movement. And they were able to secure 20 plus Democratic senators in support.
I think it was 27 at the end.
27 at the end, yeah. It was amazing, historic.
That's the most number of supports that any bill ever introduced in Congress has ever gotten in the United States Senate.
Yeah. So it's a shame that there was a hearing that was going to be scheduled, and unfortunately, because of how the legislative schedule works, I believe there were some scheduling issues, and then with election also, it's a very sensitive topic. So yes. I think there were some issues there that we were not able to schedule it, but it's still a historic achievement to have that in the Senate and to have all the support and all those senators already on the record.
Yep.
Supporting
a resolution to this issue.
Exactly, to this issue. So we're very excited about that and to be working with them again in this new Congress.
That's fantastic. And interestingly enough, that leads us right into the election. So last November was a historic election, both at the federal level as well as in Puerto Rico. Obviously, everyone knows what the federal results were. Let's talk about Puerto Rico. Jennifer González won a decisive victory for governor, cementing her as the undisputed leader of the Puerto Rico statehood movement and as the new governor. Tell us about her victory, and specifically, what were the other candidates that were in that election and how they fared and what the surprises were that came out of that.
So there was a lot of excitement around Jennifer running for governor, and she's very personable, right? And she's really in touch with the people, and I think people were able to see that. And once she won the primary, she did ask for support in the legislature to keep it with the PNP party, because if you're going to promise an agenda, right, and you have this vision of how you want to better Puerto Rico, you have to give her the legislature as well to be able to implement those policies. And we've already seen that. She's already gotten a few bills, I think this morning, 3 bills that got introduced in the Puerto Rico legislature, because we want to advance things, when we talk about energy infrastructure, when we talk about permits, all these things that I think are hindering the economic development of the island, have been things that she's been talking about throughout her campaign. And I think people understand that those are some burdensome regulations, and they want to make sure that the issues get resolved, and they see her as being able to deliver those results. So we won majority in the House and in the Senate in Puerto Rico. We won most of the other municipalities as well. We have mayors there as well. Unfortunately, there's been some division in terms of some of her opponents at the time, right? The surprise there was the number 2, Juan Dalmau, who was gained support by.
And he's the pro-independence
party.
He's
the pro-independence, yeah. but like it happened in my country of Nicaragua. Mm-hmm. You try to say that you are creating alliances, and you are misguiding the voters, and that is that is unfortunate, and that is a real threat that we all have to, as citizens, as people who value our American citizenship, our values. That we have to protect them. Mm-hmm. And that is, you see this movement across the board as well. So that's something that we have to keep an eye on, because that was, we certainly do not want to bring strength to those kind of divisive, that makes us get further away from the United States. We want to be closer. We want to be part of the United States. So we got to defend that.
So I think one of the things that supports that perspective is the fact that Jennifer González didn't just win the election. She won it decisively. She won it with 41% support in a field with multiple candidates. The candidate for the Puerto Rico Independence Party got 11 points less than her. So that's, very significant. But the other thing that was really astounding about the election is that on the plebiscite ballot, where voters had the opportunity to choose between statehood, independence, and independence with free association, voters didn't just choose statehood, they chose statehood by 58%. So with so much talk about the growth of the independence movement happening in Puerto Rico and, all of this, hoopla that happened, locally with, Congress members like Nidia Velázquez and AOC flying down to Puerto Rico to endorse the pro-independence candidate Juan Dalmau, major reggaeton trap superstar Bad Bunny, putting his paw print on the election. And basically creating all of this buzz and idea that independence was going to get all of this support. Yet now when we have the certified results, what do they show for independence? Is Puerto Rico really, massively growing its support towards independence?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And I don't know if you share already, but we do have the official results of the Puerto Rico State Elections Commission. For those of you who want to look at the website, these are the certified results showing, and we've already started with some of the representatives from Puerto Rico who flew in this week to share those results with members of Congress so that they understand that Puerto Rico does want statehood. And those who are here talking about independence or I've had, congressional staff reach out to me about all this Bad Bunny, controversy. And I tell them, no, it's two different things. Statehood won. And Jennifer González is our governor. And again, the pro-statehood movement had massive victories across the board in Puerto Rico. So it is not true that Puerto Rico wants to become an independent country.
Definitely. And another thing that, for better or for worse, also proves that is the fact that the Popular Democratic Party for candidate, Pablo Jose Hernandez, was elected as the resident commissioner for Puerto Rico. So it's the first time now in a couple of decades where the Puerto Rico statehood movement does not have its candidates in the resident commissioner's office. Yet Pablo Jose Hernandez is decidedly in favor of maintaining a strong and permanent relationship between Puerto Rico and the United States, and decidedly opposed to independence or independence with free association. All of this obviously complicates how federal policymaking process happens in Congress with regards to Puerto Rico, because he also has a different view of what Puerto Rico's future should look like. He wants to create a set of exceptions to Puerto Rico to keep it in territory status and to improve that in some way. And now that Governor González-Colón has moved from her office in the U.S. Capitol down to her office in La Fortaleza, you, as executive director of PRFAA and this office here, are now the main stakeholders representing the governor, representing the view of the majority of voters. How do you feel about that role and that responsibility?
It's a big responsibility.
Yeah.
But I am no strange to that role. So we are going. This is the mandate of the people of Puerto Rico. If the resident commissioner wants to ignore that, that's on him. But the governor even issued an executive order to uphold this and to defend it. Yeah. And that, to me, is my, this office, the mission of this office, and we will do everything that we can to make sure that that is defended and protected and advanced. So it is a big role, but we're excited because we have the backup here.
Of
right?
the facts.
Of the facts.
And the certified results.
There we go. And, the governor is well regarded here in D.C. So she may be over there, but she will be coming to D.C. And then, phone calls, those relationships that she made are lasting. So she doesn't titubea.
Yeah.
Right. She's not gonna flake on that mandate by the people of Puerto Rico.
No, that's great. That's great.
So, and I welcome anybody who wants to come to our office.
Yes.
Or to meet, or anytime they're in DC, you're welcome to. This is your office. Don't feel like because we don't have the congressional seat, you can't come to DC.
So the statehood movement has a home in PRFAA.
It has a home in PRFAA.
Fantastic.
We need you. We need advocates because we are only successful because of the collaborative effort that we all have.
Definitely.
So everybody plays a role, and that's certainly important, and we're here to serve you.
Fantastic. So, another element of this past election that obviously changes the landscape, but I think provides a unique opportunity to Governor González-Colón and to your office, is the fact that Republicans now control the three main bodies of power in the federal government: White House, Senate, and the House of Representatives. With this Republican trifecta, with Trump in the White House.
Thank you for wearing the red tie, by the way.
It's my power tie. I love it. So with the Republican trifecta and Trump in the White House, one of the concerns that has been voiced over and over again by Republicans in past sessions of Congress is a concern about the political future of Puerto Rico if it were to be granted statehood. The common knowledge or common language that was used is that if Puerto Rico became a state, it would automatically mean 2 Democratic senators and 4 Democratic representatives, and that would be disastrous. Yet this election shows significant evidence otherwise. What do you say to people who are still, spouting off that, those types of comments?
Definitely, the election of Jennifer González proves that there are Republicans who are ready to step in. Same with the legislature. We have the president of the House the Speaker of the House and the president of the Senate in Puerto Rico who are also Republicans, and the vast majority, actually in both legislatures, are Republicans. So again, the proof, right? There's a lot of rhetoric around DC and Puerto Rico and bringing 4 senators, and they try to tie us in and confuse people. We're obviously showing that is not the case. We will make sure that, that is heard loud and clear here in the halls of Congress, so that there is no confusion on that.
Yeah. And even with stateside voters that are of Puerto Rican descent, we saw a significant increase in the amount of them that voted for Republicans. So I think what that paints is a very different picture of Puerto Rico automatically going to become a Democrat state if it's offered statehood by Congress, and instead paints a picture of Puerto Rico more as a swing state, similar to what we saw in Florida not so long ago, right?
And and I think that's the case in most states, right? You're always going to have the urban areas to be more democratic or more, or moderate versus the rural areas. And Puerto Rico, as we know, there's a lot of a lot of very conservative areas. And when you talk to them about in Puerto Rico the issues of some of the social issues, right? It's not necessarily what they think. And I think our image was also damaged a bit with the former mayor of San Juan during the hurricane. The hurricane brought a spotlight that Puerto Rico didn't have before, and I think that back and forth between President Trump and the then mayor kind of brought some issues there and some negative spotlight. But I think we're on a good track to correct that. And again, this is why having Jennifer in Fortaleza was so crucial, to get her elected, and she worked already with President Trump during his first term in the White House. So they know who she is, right? Most of the senators know who she is. Most of the representatives know who she is. So I think that's going to be important in our fight for statehood and our fight to change some of that rhetoric, because that is what it is, rhetoric around the whole Democrat-Republican issue of Puerto Rico.
So with Jennifer González in La Fortaleza as governor of Puerto Rico, one of the things that I think is a critical opportunity is to showcase the policies that she's actually seeking to advance and how they match up with the policies that the incoming administration here at the federal level, as well as Republican-led Congress, is trying to advance. Can you tell us a little bit about what are some of the key policy priorities outside of the statehood issue that Jennifer González and her administration are looking forward to advance?
Yeah, so there's a few things. I talked a little bit about permitting reform being a big one, for the governor. Energy, and we heard the president also has talked about energy. Republicans in Congress have also talked about energy, diversifying, and not just choosing one way or the other. Especially in our case in Puerto Rico, we are at a disadvantage with the weak infrastructure of our energy grid. So that's something that has been priority for her. And that aligns with what Republicans and the president have said in terms of diversifying our energy portfolio. The other thing would be infrastructure, right? The federal funding that has been assigned, put it to work. President Trump assigned that funding. There were close to $17 billion that he assigned in September 2020 through FEMA, in addition to all the funding that had been already approved in Congress before for disaster. And we see a lot of it hasn't been obligated, hasn't been spent. So it is a priority of her to do that, to show that, this money was assigned, it's being put to use, and so that people can see results, and so that the federal government doesn't think, oh, they're just sitting on it, and wondering what we're doing with it or how long is it going to take. We want to be able to show the results. This is the funding that was assigned. These have been the results. And not just, and this is why permitting reform is big. One of the things that the governor has said is she's waiving any additional permitting required by the state of Puerto Rico if it's already been approved at the federal level. She's not going to do anything that's duplicative.
Duplicative, yeah.
So I think that also aligns with the Republican platform of cutting red tape, cutting bureaucracy, small government. Another thing that she's been already talking about is national security. As you know, we are a target for criminal organizations, drug traffickers. She has made some great decisions already in the nominations that she's made for the Secretary of Public Safety, among others, that she's going to prioritize the national security. So that Puerto Rico, can be safer, because if Puerto Rico is safe, so is the United States, right?
Exactly.
I mean, we are all the drug that comes in. If we allow it to come into Puerto Rico, all you have to do is just mail it to Florida or elsewhere in the United States. So we gotta make sure it doesn't get to Puerto Rico. So strengthening the Caribbean border has been one of her priorities in Congress, and will continue to do so. She has a great relationship with the federal agencies down there. We're very happy to have them there, and that's something that would go away under independence. So you got to look out for that. So that's another thing that she's also talked about and prioritized in terms of aligning with the federal agenda and the Republican agenda. And the other thing is manufacturing, and we heard the president talk about that as well. We saw it during COVID. We can't. I think Admiral Peter Brown said it once. He said during his time in the position at the White House, "Fire China, hire Puerto Rico." And that's continues to be our motto. We have, manufacturing is 47% of our GDP. So
and this is all done by U.S. citizens on
exactly,
U.S.
on the
soil,
island.
and generating billions worth of interstate commerce between Puerto Rico and the States.
Exactly, and you have all the big pharmaceutical companies, medical supply companies in Puerto Rico. We want to make sure they stay there. We got to give them the incentives and the infrastructure. I go back to the energy. Energy is big when you're trying. You can't manufacture all these things on solar only. So it's important to keep them there because, like I said, if we wanna retain Puerto Ricans in Puerto Rico, we need to give them the tools.
Definitely.
If you have these companies leave and then less jobs, the economy suffers, and that's gonna be important for her and for the president as well, as he mentioned during his address.
One of the things that I'm hearing from you is that there is a vision that Governor González-Colón is developing for Puerto Rico that is more competitive, for Puerto Rico that is thriving economically, for Puerto Rico that is sharing more and more interstate commerce with the states, but also helping to serve as a point for U.S. companies to export to Latin America and the Caribbean, and also a stronger Puerto Rico and a stronger American Caribbean border, right? Yeah. So that the United States can solidify its position in the global standing at a time when actors like China and Russia, and even lesser actors like President Maduro in Venezuela are increasingly trying to exert their influence, and in the case of Maduro, even making comments that are threats to a potential invasion of Puerto Rico to grant it independence when the majority of people on the island don't want that. Can you tell us a little bit about how you see that particular dynamic and what played out there in the last couple of weeks?
We've gotten the support for Puerto Rico and Puerto Rico statehood solidified with those comments. The governor quickly sent a letter to then President-elect Trump, Mike Waltz, who is the National Security Advisor, and now Secretary Marco Rubio, on that. And we got a lot of support from members of Congress already reaching out, and some people in the national security space, laughing this off and saying, how dare Maduro do that, and this is why we need Puerto Rico to become a state. So that solidified the support for statehood, solidified how us as Americans are against dictators like Maduro. But we also have to be very vigilant at the United Nations, because that is something every year they come and they talk about this. We do have a great ally there with soon-to-be Ambassador Elise Stefanik, who is pro-statehood. She was formerly Republican conference chair, and she's right now going through her nomination process with the hearings and everything. So her vote should be coming up soon. We need allies that can defend statehood across the board. So like I was just talking about Mike Waltz, Marco Rubio, they all are in positions that are important and crucial for national security, and they are all supportive of statehood. So I think that's going to be great for our movement. And Maduro, he needs to watch out.
Yeah, because the reality is, he has ignored the will of his own, voters. That's right. And then he's ignoring the will of voters in Puerto Rico. So there's just no surprise there.
What can you expect from a dictator? Ignores the voters, doesn't support any of our democratic values, and wants to create that division.
And weaken the United States.
Puerto Rico is not Venezuela.
Process. We're not going to fall for it.
We're not going to fall for that.
So recently, reggaeton artist Bad Bunny released his new album, which basically subtly pushes the narrative that the only means to preserve Puerto Rican culture is through independence for the island. And if Puerto Rico were granted statehood, it would automatically lose its culture, and people who are from Puerto Rico would be forced to leave and would be displaced. Now, you being someone who is a Latina, you grew up in Florida, in Miami, living stateside. Have you seen in your experience that because you live in a state, you're automatically going to lose your culture? Like if Puerto Rico becomes a state, will Puerto Rican culture disappear?
Absolutely not. And you see it in Florida and in New York. Florida is going to celebrate in Orlando a massive, which I hear is every year, San Sebastian. They are
Festival.
going to the
Yep.
festival coming up at the beginning of February. In New York, you have the New York Parade, and
Yep.
there's similar. Puerto Ricans are celebrating their heritage across the board. So it is not accurate that they would lose it, because we see those demonstrations. Like I said, Florida, New York, where we have the biggest concentrations of Puerto Ricans.
Definitely. And the same Bomba y Plena that Bad Bunny is playing in his album and blowing everyone's minds about how awesome that Afro-Latino beat that is, traditionally Puerto Rican is happening on the island. You also hear it in these festivals and in these events, both in Florida and New York. So Bomba y Plena, Puerto Rican culture is here to stay.
What you're seeing is, again, part of the misinformation, part of the rhetoric. Being from Miami, exactly, that's the comparison that I always tell people. We all speak Spanish.
Yep.
Every day, all the time.
And you eat Cuban
Yeah,
food.
and we dance salsa y reggaeton and everything else, and we have representation in Congress.
Mm-hmm.
We get to vote for president. We cherish our American values.
Your economy's stronger.
Florida, the governor said it herself. She wants to copy a lot of the Florida policies because Florida is thriving.
Yeah.
Is thriving. So it's trying to confuse people. You're not gonna lose that. Hawaii hasn't lost. Alaska hasn't lost their identity. They're still, you see also the Native communities across the United States.
Yeah.
So. And what you're having is more Puerto Ricans moving to the States, and sometimes it's not even just Florida or New York. They go to others. I've traveled with the governor across the country, and we've met with Puerto Rican communities in Nebraska, in other areas, and they haven't lost who they are.
Yeah.
You don't lose sight of who you are just because you're,
You have full rights.
You have full rights.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't want to leave the island. They're forced because of the economic issues. That are perpetuated by the current status, which is why it's incredible that people are still supporting that agenda.
Yeah.
Because it has created some of the worst challenges that are still felt today. We're underfunded in several programs. We have to fight every few years for Medicaid, that is so vital. None of the states have to do that.
Yeah, and our economy doesn't have an even playing field from which it can compete.
Exactly.
And that's what statehood would bring.
Yeah.
So I think that, that's incredibly helpful because I understand the fears and the concerns of people who are, afraid of change. Change is definitely something that brings about concerns, and that's legitimate to have that conversation. But I also think that for everyone out there who supports this issue, and for those who are just getting educated about it now, the most important thing to take into account is whether it's Nicolás Maduro calling for an invasion of Puerto Rico to give it an independence that voters have not chosen, or Bad Bunny,
Rejected.
Who have, been subtly calling for Puerto Rico to enter into a separate independent governor and endorsing the pro-independence candidate and calling for cultural isolation, when in reality, even his own success is a reflection of the intermingling between American culture and Puerto Rican culture. What those views hold in common is that they're not actually listening to the majority of voters. But who is? Jennifer González-Colón and your administration.
We're very excited to be here. We wanna make sure that we do everything that we can to advance the statehood issue. And again, people, this is our mandate.
Yep.
This is our Bible. You know, so we're excited about that.
So to wrap things up here, what advice would you give our supporters, our listeners, about how they can participate and get involved in and support this mandate by the U.S. citizens of Puerto Rico to end the undemocratic and unequal current territory status and to push for statehood? What would you recommend?
We need your engagement, your continued engagement. I know that there's been petitions, there's been groups that meet with their members of Congress. Keep doing that. We need that. That is crucial for us to advance this. You know, we do have, I mentioned earlier, some members of Congress who say, oh, I don't hear from my constituents on this issue. Or that they don't even know that they have Puerto Ricans. And then, you know, we go to the census website and say, no, you actually have, you know, 15,000 or 30,000 or whatever Puerto Ricans in your district. We need them to hear from you. So please do that whenever you can. I understand members of Congress sometimes are here in DC. You can meet with the staff, call, email, anything that's available to do it. It's important to speak out. Also, this is a good segue to plug in the Summit of Statehood and Equality that is going to be taking place. So, as you all know, March 2nd marks the anniversary of being granted citizenship to Puerto Ricans. And we will use that occasion to celebrate here in Washington, D.C., the summit.
Fantastic.
Where we're going to organize Hill meetings and conferences, talk about advocacy strategies. We're going to feature administration officials and members of Congress as well to come talk about it. So stay tuned for details on that and save the date. March 2nd, 3rd, and 4th here in Washington, D.C.
Well, fantastic. We definitely are very happy to share information about that with our supporters and our public on PR 51st and the Mano a Mano podcast. So with that, Gabriela, thank you so much for all of your time and for your service. We look forward to continuing to collaborate with you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.